Chinese authorities admit the Three Gorges Dam has moved, leaked, and distorted. That on the same day the dam saw its most severe flooding of the year. Wartime status is declared in Xinjiang's capital city amid an outbreak of the virus. All neighborhoods are locked down with transportation suspended. A possible cover-up has been revealed. Drone footage appears to show Uyghur Muslims from Xinjiang bound and blindfolded and being led onto a train with an unknown destination. China's ambassador to the UK was shown this footage, and his response has gone viral online. News about a potential travel ban on Chinese Communist Party members to the US made the Chinese words for quit CCP become popular on Google search term trends. And over 600 US and worldwide lawmakers and officials condemned the Chinese regime for its crackdown on practitioners of Falun Gong. July 20th marks the 21st year since the CCP began its persecution of the spiritual group. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. After the Three Gorges Dam saw its highest level of flooding this year, authorities admitted the dam has distorted, leaked, and moved. The next day, officials downstream blasted open a dam to release the excess water. NTD's Juliet Song has more.
Over the weekend, China's famous Three Gorges Dam, located on the Yangtze River, saw its most severe flooding yet this year. The same day, authorities admit the dam has moved, leaked, and distorted. This past Saturday, a new round of flooding hit the dam, with incoming water reaching over 60,000 cubic meters per second. That's twice the rate of the next most powerful flood. On the same day, Chinese state media Xinhua reported the dam has moved, leaked, and distorted. But the report didn't give out specific numbers, instead emphasizing that all major parameters are within normal range. Together with heavy rain, the increased water from the dam has also sent the water level downstream soaring. That led authorities from Anhui province to blast open a local dam during the wee hours of the morning in effort to elevate the pressure. Chinese officials used the same tactic back in 1998, the country's worst flooding in recent decades. On Monday morning, the water level inside the Three Gorges Dam was still above its flood warning level. That's as it may be hit with another round of flooding on Tuesday. While the Yangtze River flooding persists, another major river, located further north, is also getting overwhelmed. That leaves the region between the two rivers at risk, which happens to be one of China's most important economic centers. Juliet Song, NTD News.
Now to a former Olympic diving champion in China. Liao Lishi has just been banned from Chinese social media site Weibo for 1 year after she spoke up to defend human rights. After the ban, she opened a new Twitter account and wrote, "Freedom of speech is a human right. I will continue to speak up on Twitter." On Weibo, Lao once forwarded a link from an acclaimed Chinese writer from Wuhan known as Fang Fang, who wrote a diary documenting events in Wuhan during the pandemic. It covered topics ranging from the challenges of daily life to the physiological impact of forced isolation. After Fang Fang's diary was published overseas, she was immediately attacked and accused of damaging Wuhan's image. Lao Lishi was also attacked simply for forwarding the link to the journal. Her critics referred to her Weibo account as Maggot Base Camp. Some compared her to Hao Haidong, a former famous soccer player in China who's also endured online scrutiny. He's been under siege on the web ever since he broke away from the Communist Party in June. His wife Yi Zhaoying and former badminton world champion did the same. Subsequently, his and his wife's Weibo accounts were also deleted. In reply to those attacking her online, Lao Lishi wrote that she is a kind-hearted person, but is firm and unyielding in the face of what she called despicable people. She added she can't let the land she loves become a paradise for spineless animals. Lastly, she added that she can't do that today and will never do it in the future. Her remarks have gone viral online. Now we turn to the virus situation in China's Xinjiang region. Urumqi, the capital city of Xinjiang, declared wartime status over the weekend. All neighborhoods in the area have been put under lockdown. That's as medical teams from 10 Chinese provinces were sent to the city to help with virus testing. According to Chinese media reports, even hotels are being utilized. One hotel staff member reports that since July 12th, her hotel has started accepting guests for quarantine who've had close contact with confirmed virus patients. A day later, close to 100 people filled the hotel. But the city health officials and the health commission didn't announce the confirmed cases until 4 days later. That's also the same day the citywide lockdown was ordered. The diagnosed patients are currently being treated at Urumqi's hospital for infectious disease. A doctor there told us that everyone in the city must be tested for the virus. He added that the hospital is also being locked down and no doctors are allowed to leave. The sudden lockdown caught many locals by surprise and left them unprepared. A business owner told us he didn't know about the lockdown until 10:30 that night. By that time, supermarkets, rice shops, and grain stores were already empty when he went out to stock up on food. Most trains and flights in and out of the city have been suspended. No buses or taxis are available either. So if hotel customers want to leave the city, they have to contact the local community management to request a virus test. If the test comes back negative, community management will arrange transportation to the train station or airport. But for now, it's unclear when trains will start running again. Drone footage purportedly showing Uyghur Muslims bound and blindfolded has gone viral on social media. The video allegedly shows them being led onto a train with an unknown destination. The footage is believed to have been taken somewhere in Xinjiang, an autonomous region in northwestern China that's home to the ethnic minority group. In response, the BBC's Andrew Marr invited China's ambassador to the UK, Liu Xiaoming, onto his show. Marr asked Liu to describe what was happening in the image. Liu responded by asking Marr if he had ever visited Xinjiang, adding that the region is one of the most beautiful places in China. To which Marr responded, "That is not beautiful coverage." When Marr said the footage had been authenticated by Western intelligence and Australian experts, Liu dismissed the claims and tried to change the subject. Brushing off the allegation, he said Western intelligence has made false claims against China before. He also used the Western statement that 1 million Uyghurs have been detained in China as an example. Marr then pointed out that according to the Chinese regime's own statistics, that area's Uyghur population has fallen by over 80% from 2015 to 2018. Liu adamantly refused the figures and said they weren't correct. A report from Washington-based think tank Jamestown Foundation said the Chinese Communist Party uses forced sterilization and other measures to control the Uyghur population. The 32-page report compiled by China expert Adrian Zenz also states that the Uyghur population fell by over 80% between 2015 and 2018 and declined further in 2019. Notably, these kinds of population control measures meet the criteria cited in the UN Convention on Genocide. As for Liu's dismissal of the 1 million Uyghurs being detained, there's been wide media coverage on the subject. Leaked documents seen by BBC confirm 1 million Uyghurs were locked up and forced to undergo ideological re-education. And according to the U.S. State Department, that number could be closer to 2 million. Likewise, CNN obtained redacted government documents from China showing records of detainees inside internment camps in Xinjiang. While Chinese authorities denied those claims at first, they changed their statement after repeated public reports surfaced. Now they call the camps vocational education centers. Even members of the Uyghur ethnic group that aren't imprisoned can't seem to escape. China has repeatedly asked other countries to return them to mainland China after they were found trying to seek asylum overseas. In 2015, Thailand returned nearly 100 Uyghurs to China, and in 2017, Egypt returned 24. They have since disappeared upon arriving back in China. Now to the U.S. The U.S. Commerce Department has added 11 Chinese companies to the U.S. economic blacklist. They're accused of being involved in the mistreatment of Uyghurs in Xinjiang. Among the companies are Changji Esquel Textile of the Esquel Group, which produces clothing for Ralph Lauren, Tommy Hilfiger, and Hugo Boss. Hetian Howling Hair Accessories is also on the list. Its products were seized in the U.S. earlier this month and are said to contain human hair obtained in Xinjiang. After news came about the administration's potential travel ban against communists, the Chinese words for quit CCP became a popular keyword on Google search term trends. Although relatively unnoticed in the West, a quiet grassroots movement of the Chinese people disassociating themselves from the party has actually been going on for over a decade.
According to Google Trends, the search volume of the Chinese word for withdraw from the party, or 退党, has recently seen a sharp rise in popularity. That's after media outlets reported about a potential U.S. travel ban for Chinese Communist Party members. The same surge goes for phrases like the procedure for quitting the party. But the concept of withdrawing from the Communist Party isn't a new one. One grassroots movement filled with Chinese people dissociating themselves from the party has actually been going on for over 15 years.
Even here,
Back in June 2005, former senior Chinese consulate staff in Sydney, Chen Yonglin, made international headlines. That's because of a surprise visit to a rally in Sydney held to commemorate the Tiananmen Square massacre. There, he publicly announced his departure from the CCP.
I called for the Chinese government to quickly start political reforms. Although the economy is good, people in China still do not enjoy freedom. No freedom of speech, no freedom of faith.
A week after Chen's announcement, Hao Fengjun, a former security official in China, also publicly stated his withdrawal from the party. And in 2009, veteran Chinese intelligence agent Li Fengzhi quit the party in front of the Chinese embassy in Washington, D.C.
I solemnly declare that I'm completely breaking away from the Chinese Communist Party. The Chinese Communist Party is not China. The CCP has done damage to China and its excellent traditional culture. Therefore, being anti-CCP equals patriotism. Quitting the CCP is saving China.
All three cited a book that inspired them to change their views on the CCP called The 9 Commentaries on the Chinese Communist Party. Published by NTD's sister media, The Epoch Times, it helped prompt a decade-long quiet movement among Chinese people to rethink their beliefs about the party. The series details the history of the Communist Party in China with a particular focus on its human rights record, from the Cultural Revolution, the Great Leap Forward, to the Tiananmen Square massacre, and the crackdown on and organ harvesting of people who practice the spiritual meditation system Falun Gong. The Epoch Times was founded in response to the communist repression and censorship in China.
Many people started contacting the Chinese Epoch Times, asking if they can somehow publicly announce that they are formally disassociating themselves from the party.
The paper later started to receive and collect statements from people renouncing the party and published them online. The site says that so far, over 300 million people have renounced the party or its affiliated organizations. There are 90 million Chinese Communist Party members. But by adding in the current and former members of the Youth League and Young Pioneers, which almost all school-age children are forced to join, communist affiliation in China actually involves a much larger group of people. Except for some high-profile announcements by Chinese people in the West, most statements that renounce the party are from mainland Chinese people who use anti-censorship technology to post their statements. Many use aliases for fear of retribution. Some who can't go online have posted their statements in public places.
And it's perhaps the largest civil disobedience movement in China since the Tiananmen Square protests.
Was later published in multiple languages and began attracting attention in the West, especially among those who've experienced communism firsthand. That includes Ukraine's first elected president, who played an instrumental role in dissolving the Soviet Union.
This book has offered many thought-provoking historical materials. It not only reveals the evil of the CCP, but also prompted many to withdraw from the Communist Party after reading it.
Former Polish President Lech Walesa, who also led his country out of communism, called the movement history's tsunami. He said the fight against communism is not yet finished, but that nothing is able to stop it anymore, adding that no one can stop the spirit of freedom and truth. Scholars estimate up to 80 million have died in China under the communist regime. Since the end of the Cold War, advocating against communism has seemed to be a lonely and difficult battle, especially for those who still live under communist rule. But in recent years, the regime's growing encroachment has become more and more clear to people living under it. In 2014, a group of student protesters occupied Taiwan's legislature in a show of resistance over a trade deal with China. They feared that China will crack down on the island's freedom by using economic leverage. As part of what's called the Sunflower Movement, young Taiwanese people shouted the slogan that emerged from the mainland Chinese Tuidang movement: "Heaven will destroy the CCP."
Heaven will destroy the CCP. Heaven will destroy the CCP. Heaven will destroy the CCP.
The slogan gained even more traction when Beijing started to tighten its control over Hong Kong last year.
As a person, as a Hong Konger, I'm not afraid. Heaven will destroy the CCP. Stop the one-party dictatorship.
Last summer, in a stunning show of defiance, an unarmed Hong Kong protester held up a poster produced by the Epoch Times Hong Kong edition. At the same time, she gestured at a police officer who had his gun pointed at her. Trump administration officials have recently been emphasizing the differences between the regime and the Chinese people. A China affairs commentator said that by specifically targeting the party, the U.S. is gradually delegitimizing the communist regime. Reporting by Penny Zhou, NTD News.
Over 30 U.S. lawmakers and officials, as well as over 600 lawmakers worldwide, put pen to paper to denounce a 21-year-long persecution. They condemned the Chinese regime for its crackdown on practitioners of Falun Gong. July 20th marks the 21st year since the CCP began its persecution of the spiritual group.
Dozens of officials and U.S. lawmakers from both parties are expressing solidarity with Falun Gong practitioners and thanking them for advocacy of religious freedom. The spiritual group has faced imprisonment and torture in China. Last year, an independent tribunal in London found that the Chinese regime has and continues to harvest the organs of Falun Gong adherents and sell them for profit. China's state media initially promoted the practice for its effectiveness in improving health. But former communist leader Jiang Zemin launched the persecution in 1999, when the spiritual group became so popular that the number of people practicing exceeded that of Communist Party membership. In a video statement, the commissioner at the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom called on the Chinese regime to stop its assaults on the practice.
Communist China is the greatest threat to religious freedom in the world. No one else is even close.
He applauded the spiritual group's anti-persecution efforts and called for the U.S. government to conduct an investigation into the allegations of forced organ harvesting in China. U.S. Ambassador at Large for International Religious Freedom Sam Brownback also issued a video statement saying the CCP is at war with faith, but it's a war they will not win.
May next year be not the 22nd anniversary that we recognize the persecution, but the first year we recognize the freedom of the people of Falun Gong and everybody throughout China to practice their faith freely.
14 Democrat and 15 Republican lawmakers sent letters to show solidarity. Falun Gong, also known as Falun Dafa, is a spiritual discipline that includes meditative exercises and a set of moral teachings based on the principles of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. At its peak of popularity, the discipline was practiced by around 70 million people before the persecution. Outside the U.S., over 600 lawmakers from 30 countries issued a joint statement calling on the CCP to immediately stop its brutal campaign against Falun Gong. Bitter Winter, a magazine focusing on religious freedom in China, called the amount of the international support unprecedented, notwithstanding the fake news spread by the CCP.
Her name is Zhongfang Yang. She passed away on July the 2nd, 2002. She was 37 years old.
According to the Falun Dafa Information Center, more than 4,000 practitioners are confirmed to have died from torture. But due to the difficulty of obtaining information from China, the center said the true death toll is likely to be many times higher. And the brutality continues today. At least 27 Falun Gong practitioners were persecuted to death this year by May. 10 of them died during detention at a local police station or prison. Penny Zhou, NTD News.
And Secretary of State Mike Pompeo also demanding today that the regime stop its persecution of the spiritual meditation practice. Pompeo said 21 years of persecution of Falun Gong practitioners is far too long and it must end. He welcomed a practitioner who survived the CCP's torture in a labor camp to speak at the U.S. Ministerial to Advance Religious Freedom. The Falun Dafa Information Center says Pompeo's statement and long-standing support will inspire millions of Chinese people to continue their pursuit of freedom. The United States is taking action against a Chinese company with links to trafficking in fentanyl. The substance has played a major role in the opioid crisis in the U.S., and officials say China is the main source of illegal supplies. The United States is putting sanctions on a Chinese company and 4 individuals with links to trafficking in fentanyl. The company is Global United Biotechnology. It's run by alleged Chinese drug kingpin Zhang Fujing. Late August, the Treasury identified Zhang and his drug trafficking organization, or DTO, as significant foreign narcotics traffickers. The Treasury said the 4 individuals allegedly bought fentanyl and other drugs from the Zhang organization. It said the Zhang DTO used digital currency like Bitcoin to launder drug proceeds. It transmitted proceeds in and out of bank accounts in Hong Kong and China. The Treasury said the company was a virtual storefront for Zhang's drug trafficking organization. The designation means all the company's property in the U.S. must be blocked and reported. Fentanyl is a cheap painkiller that's 50 times more potent than heroin. It's played a major role in the opioid crisis. Over 28,000 people died from synthetic opioid-related overdoses in 2017. U.S. officials say China is the main source of illegal fentanyl. Now we turn to Hong Kong. The UK has suspended its extradition deal with Hong Kong in response to Beijing's new security law there.
An extradition deal takes effect if someone in the UK is suspected of a crime in Hong Kong. The Hong Kong authorities can ask the UK to hand them over to face justice, and vice versa.
And the government has decided to suspend the extradition treaty immediately and indefinitely.
According to Raab, the UK will not reactivate the deal before there are clear and robust measures preventing it from being misused under the new national security law. The UK fears that people extradited to Hong Kong could be sent on to China.
We have to think about the human rights, the rights of the people of Hong Kong to participate in democratic processes, and people here from Hong Kong, and how those changes affect them.
The UK has also extended its arms embargo to Hong Kong, which has been applied to mainland China since 1989. This comes as tension is already rising between the UK and China. China has already threatened to retaliate over Britain's Huawei ban.
Prominent Hong Kong democracy activist Joshua Wong has applied to run for a seat in the city's legislature, raising the prospect of a battle with authorities after he was barred from running in previous polls.
Prominent democracy activist Joshua Wong applied on Monday to run for a seat in Hong Kong's legislature. It raises the prospect of a battle with the Chinese-run city's authorities. He was barred from running in previous polls.
Under the chilling effect generated by Beijing, someone might doubt that will Hong Kongers give up? But I believe when I choose to run for office, it's time to put the global spotlight in Hong Kong's election. We aim and wish to take majority in Hong Kong Legislative Council election to prove we are the majority and the voice of pro-democratic camp, especially the progressive wing. Our voice must not be silenced.
Wong is one of more than a dozen young, more confrontational politicians who outshone old guard Democrats in unofficial opposition primaries this month, in what many saw as a protest vote against a national security law imposed by Beijing. The vote on September the 6th will see the pro-democracy opposition try to reclaim some political influence in a city assembly stacked with Beijing loyalists. Only half its seats are directly elected. Political analysts and democracy activists expect authorities will try to disqualify some candidates.
Global banks are looking closely at its Hong Kong clientele to see if they have pro-democracy ties. This comes after the Chinese Communist Party recently passed its national security law.
International banks are investigating whether their clients in Hong Kong have ties to the pro-democracy movement. They want to avoid upsetting the Chinese Communist regime's new national security law that was just enforced in Hong Kong. Wealth managers at HSBC, Credit Suisse, and UBS are expanding scrutiny under their programs that screen clients for political and government ties. clients designated politically exposed persons could find it difficult or even impossible to access banking services. The background check includes looking at clients' comments on social media and in public. According to Beijing, offenders of the new law can face up to life in prison. One banker says the audit of its clients can go back to 2014, the same year the pro-democracy umbrella movement took place in Hong Kong. Several elements of the new law deal with seizure of assets. Companies can also face penalties like fines and suspension to even the loss of business licenses. One hedge fund manager in Hong Kong says he expects more people to come under scrutiny from their bankers now.
And the UK Foreign Secretary says he's deeply concerned about the Chinese regime persecuting faith after he was urged to consider sanctions on human rights abusers. Our UK correspondent Jane Wirrell has more.
This traditional Chinese meditation practice is banned in China.
Falun Gong is a practice of gentle exercises and meditation, a bit like Tai Chi or yoga. It also has teachings based on truthfulness, compassion, tolerance. So it's a mind and body practice.
For 21 years, practitioners of Falun Gong, also known as Falun Dafa, have been tortured for their belief in China. China's handling of the pandemic and Beijing imposing a new repressive security law on Hong Kong has put China's human rights violations in a starker light at the core of the UK government.
China stands condemned in the World Court of Rights in relation to their abuse against Christians, against Uyghur Muslims. And this week is the 21st anniversary of the persecution of the Falun Gong, whose followers have been subject to commercial organ harvesting with the knowledge.
He urged the UK to sanction human rights abusers who persecute Falun Gong practitioners. The Foreign Secretary is concerned, though he says the challenge will be to establish the evidence and pinpoint the individuals responsible.
But we are deeply concerned about the persecution of Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, Falun Gong practitioners and others on the grounds of religion or belief in China, including, I think, with the new national security legislation, the risk that that grip only gets tighter.
Disturbing crimes highlighted by the China Tribunal held in London last year unanimously concluded that forced organ harvesting has happened in China on a substantial scale and still continues. They found the main source of organs came from practitioners of Falun Gong.
We in this world and here at the House of Commons will be their voice. Will be their voice for the voiceless, a voice for those who are being abused verbally and physically. Many other MPs are particularly moved by what is happening to the Falun Gong.
A Foreign Office minister said during a June debate that the government takes the reports on organ harvesting very seriously.
Falun Gong practitioners, because of the healthy lifestyle that they lead, they don't drink, they don't smoke, so their organs are generally healthy, and so they've been targeted for the barbaric practice of forced organ harvesting.
At this peaceful protest outside the Chinese embassy in London, practitioners are free to protest and raise awareness of 21 years of persecution. Jane Wirrell, NTD News, London.
And that's all for today's China in Focus. Thanks for watching and see you tomorrow.